Hey everyone, welcome to Quick Questions for Lent. As we're reading through the whole Holy Bible, you probably get some questions that pop up. We're going to try to answer some of them in about 2 minutes. We'll start with Ashley.
What is up with the super long lineage at the beginning of Luke's gospel? Well, it shows us who Jesus is. This points us to Jesus as the Savior of the world. It mentions David. Jesus comes from a royal line. It mentions Abraham, the father of Israel. And it mentions Adam, the first human created. So big picture of who Jesus is.
This question from Jesus' life: why would God allow Jesus to be tempted? This is in Luke chapter 4 and elsewhere in the New Testament. And really, this is a bigger question about the nature of free will. We believe that Jesus was fully human and fully God, which means that as a human, Jesus experienced life the exact same way that we do. And we are subject to temptation because this world is free. And so when we are influenced by the ways of this world, we get tempted. Jesus experienced the world the same way that you and I do. He understands the things that we go through.
Who is Theophilus? He shows up at the beginning of Luke's gospel and the book of Acts, both written by Luke, who is a Gentile. Theophilus is a Greek word that means God lover. And so Luke is trying to write to particularly Gentile people who are hearing about Jesus, trying to explain to them why they might want to put their faith in Jesus like Luke did.
Why are the 10 Commandments given twice? Well, they're smashed the first time, so God gives them again.
Do-over. All right. Old Testament again, slavery seems normal in the Old Testament. Why did God allow people to be enslaved? I thought he was against slavery. So when we think of slavery in the United States, our mind goes to the antebellum South, the horrors of slavery in the early parts of the United States history. Slavery in the Old Testament times, thousands of years ago, was a lot different than it is now. For them, it was almost an accepted part of the economy, that slavery wasn't the brutalized image that we have of it. It was almost like a regular job that you could have if that was your station in life or you needed a job. And there are even stories from the ancient world where slaves were actually adopted into the family that they served because that's where they felt like they belonged. So slavery back then was a lot different than it is now.
One final question for today. What's the deal with God punishing Moses? Moses does not get to enter the promised land with everybody else. He just gets to look over and see. Apparently, holiness and obedience is really important to God. And we see that a lot in the first 5 books of the Bible. Part of what God's trying to do is set God apart from the other nations and the other gods that those nations worship and serve, that God is different and you can trust God. And Moses, he gets in trouble when he does something a little too aggressively and kind of motivated by anger, and God says there's got to be a consequence for that.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.